is locking applicable only when users are working on the cases? Then if it is yes, then what will happen when we are trying to update a case through activity? Okay, so locking options, we can provide the locking through some of activity methods also. So let's say you open a case, you are working on the, that item, right? And if someone is trying to update that case through activity, again, it is a locking problem. So whether you open a case manually or through activity, it's again the locking issue. If someone is working on a case, another operator cannot update it either through activities or through manually. Okay. So how many ways like so we can acquire a lock through activity? So we have a, if we observe, so we have a Obj-Open, right? In the Obj-Open, so we have a locking option. Okay. So when you want to update an existing case, say there is a prerequisite that locking is applicable for the instances which is already there in the database. Okay. So meaning, so the work object which is already available, already been committed to the database. And the locking is available only for concrete classes. Okay. So there is a prerequisite call for the classes where the locking option is enabled. So if you go to this work class, this is a concrete class and click on advanced. No, basically, I will open this class from here. So there is a work pool. So it is, let's go to the access group. So we'll explain about this later. So I can open the class from the access group under the advanced tab. So this is like this for class only, the class group. And if you look at the locks, auto locking is enabled. So the locking is available, locking mechanism is applicable for only the concrete classes where the locking option is enabled. So for example, if you take another concrete classes, for example, country class, right? Okay, by default, logging is enabled for all the data types. If you disable it, so that means logging will not be applicable. So where we don't need to, acquire a log in order to update it. Okay. So in order to update the existing record, so we must acquire a log. So let's say I want to update the first name of this object. Let's say I have created a case where I entered the first name as Satya and submitted it, and it will be stored in the database. Now, if we want to update the first name for that case, what we need to do? In order to update the existing record, you must open that using Obj-Open, or we have a method called Obj-Open by handle. We will see that also. You acquire a log and you update the data. Let's say change the first name using the property set and use the obj save and either write no or commit. The data will be changed. But if you don't log it, you cannot update it. Okay, see now, observe carefully. So customer inquiry, right? So you need to understand so when to lock it. Okay. So it's always best practice. So if you are just opening a record, uh, you don't need a lock. But if you want to update that data, you must acquire a lock. Okay. So for this CU-8002, I entered the first name as Satya and submitted it. Okay. So this is completed. And if you go to the database, you see the first name as Satya only, right? Guys, just give me a second. Okay. So we submitted it. So we know that the data is stored in the database and where on the PY work page you see first name Satya. I want to change this first name. So how can we change it? Let's create an activity. Test logging strategy. This is just for testing purpose. Okay. So let's open the Obj-Open. And for which record we are opening. So we need to pass the primary key value, right? So this is the PY ID, right? So from which class we are opening the data? Where this instance is available in which class? So this CU dash, this case ID is part of which class?
Work class. USB loans work.
For class, right? Yeah. And what is the, so did we use Obj-Open already or not? Did we work on Obj-Open method or not? Hmm?
Obj-Open we didn't work that day. We just
Okay.
discussed verbally, but
Okay.
practically we didn't.
Yes, that
OBJ
is fine.
browse.
So, yeah, Obj-Open is used to fetch a single record from the database to clipboard. Okay. So, and we need to pass the primary key always. So, and what is the value? So just say I'm hard coding this value. Sorry, this one, right? Okay. So that means this Obj-Open will bring this data where PYID is equal to this from the work class and will be kept on some page. Let's say I will create a page called work page. It is not PY work page. You should not put PY work page. Let's say just work page. I'm creating a new page called same. And when you have a step page defined, so it has to be defined in the page and classes. So this work page class will be same one. So we created a new page called work page by referring to the work class. And so that when Obj-Open loads the data, will be kept on this step page called work page. Okay. So now in this work page, we have the first name, last name with the data, right? All the data properties. And I want to change the first name Satya to, let's say, Kumar. Okay, so we are assigning this value. So already we have first name Satya, and when we assign it, that gets replaced. Okay. So Satya will be replaced with the value Kumar, and we need to save this to the database. So what method we need to use? Which method we have to
OBJ save.
use to save this workspace? Yeah, OBJ save. And we are executing this activity as a standalone. So it has to be either we need to enable the write now or commit method. Let's say I'm enabling write now option. So this record which we are opening is already exist in the database or not? Yes or
Yeah,
no?
it already exists in the database.
It's already exists, right? So that's the reason we are trying to change it. So now let's run this, trace it, okay, and click on run to see the step-by-step execution process. Okay, so here there is some issue looks like because it is not throwing an error. Ideally, okay, so you don't see any issue with this activity. Okay, status is good, but expectation is right. So when you open this case, you should see this name as a first name. So let's see that 8002, right? Why it is not changed? See, it should throw an error actually because see, but the data is not changed, right? Like so first name is still Satya, though we have changed it Kumar. So meaning, so this is not saving into the database. Why it is not saved is when you are trying to update the existing record, we must acquire a lock on this instance. Okay. Now see, but ideally it has to throw an error. So looks like there is some issue with the edition, personal edition. Okay. So now let's click on run. Now you see the status success array, but you should see it has to be changed, right? Let's say let's refresh now. Let me reopen. Still it is not changed because I will tell you the reason also. When we again like it has to throw an error basically. So now I'm going to use or just log off and you don't make any change, log off and log in back. Okay, so it will work. So when you want to when we want to update a case through activity, so we must acquire a log. Okay, so now let's look at the existing value. It is Satya only, right? First name. Okay, so now let's execute. Okay, so now reopen this case or refresh. Is it changed? Yes, right? So, but when we when we haven't selected this, lock enable. So when we haven't enabled this, that time it was not updated. Okay. So that means simply what you need to understand is if you want to update an existing record, you must acquire a lock for the concrete class instances where the locking is enabled. Okay. So now the difference between the write now and commit is the commit release the lock immediately. Let's say lock enabled release on commit means the moment we committed this instance to the database, the lock will be released on that instance. Okay. So we have this right now also will be committed, but not release the lock. But when we use the commit method, the lock also will be released. Okay. The difference between Obj-Save right now and commit is the right now doesn't release the commit upon saving the data into the database, but the commit method does release the lock upon saving. That is the main difference. Okay. Now, let's say uh, take the new case, customer inquiry. It is CU8003, right? Let's say other operator is working on this case. Okay. So this operator dev1 at the rate of USB is working on CU-8003. Okay. You know that okay, this is the default login, right? Because it's a customer case. So you know that like so CU8003 cannot be opened. Okay. You know that this is the default locking, so other operator cannot work on. So we already know about this, right? So now, but this operator is trying to update that case through activity. Okay. So let's say CU-8003. Okay. It is being modified by dev1 at the rate of USB, but at the same time, this operator is trying to update the first name. Okay. And so saving also, right? Obj save right now. Now let's trace it. What happened? So
Fail.
Obj-Open is failed. So can you tell the reason? Cannot obtain a lock on the instance because a requester already has the lock. So this means this operator is already open the case and working on. So another operator cannot open that case even through activity. Okay. So now let's say this operator closed it. Now can we update it? Okay.
Yes, once it is closed, we can update.
Yeah. So now if we refresh this, let's say W03. Now let's say it is updated. We know that the data is saved into the database. If other operator that is admin for dev1 If this operator is trying to open it, so what will happen? There will be a lock on that instance still, because can you guess why? Why? Because we haven't used the commit, we just use the right now. So when we acquire a lock on that instance, so when we lock it, the lock will be acquired on that instance, but that will be released upon commit. So we haven't used the commit. So that is the reason if other operator is trying to open it, it is still showing that it is being modified by another operator. So this operator is not open, right? This is a different object. So this operator is not open, but still getting the lock issue. That means this operator acquired a lock through activity, but not release the lock. Okay. So when we are using this obj save, right? Like, so we have to ensure whether we need to retain the lock or release the lock. Okay. So now it is default locking, so it will be there for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, if this operator open it, it will be open. Okay. So now in the same scenario, we will use the commit instead right now. Let's say but you see here the first name is updated, right? Okay. The data is updated, but the lock is not released from other operator. So now let's say I'm changing it to Kumar and obj save. And so since we are updating the existing record, so we are acquiring a lock and releasing upon the commit. So we are using the commit method. Okay. So now let's see. Okay. So it is committed. If other operator, okay, is trying to open this object, will it be open or will see the locking issue? Ashok?
It will be open.
Yes. In the previous scenario, it was not open because we haven't used the commit. But the data is committed into the database through right now. But see, through right now option, the data is committed, but not the lock. Lock is not released. Now we use the commit method and let's see what will happen. So the expectation is it should open. Okay. Clear? So that is the difference between the right now and commit. So right now doesn't release the lock from the instance, whereas the commit does it, meaning commit release the lock from the instance. Clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is how we acquire a lock through activity method called Obj-Open. And similarly, we can also acquire a lock using Obj-Open by handle. So that we will work on. Okay.
Sir, I have a doubt. Satya sir?
Yeah.
Yes. Sir, is there any access to provide only particular developer to work on that particular project? Like 10 members or 20 members ఉంటారు కదా. మనకి మన డౌట్స్ వచ్చినప్పుడు ఒక పర్టికులర్ డెవలపరే వర్క్ చేసేటట్టు మనం ఏమన్నా లాక్ యాక్సెస్ ఇవ్వడానికి.
But on the work object, you mean to say?
Yes, yes.
That's all right. Like the default locking provides an exclusive access to the single developer, right? Let's say single user, right? So if you are working on a case, so that is the default behavior that another operators or users cannot. I'm not getting your question. I'm not sure if I answered to your question correctly.
For example,
Yeah.
I have ఐఎమ్ వర్కింగ్ ఆన్ పర్టికులర్ వర్క్.
Mhm.
నాకు ఒక డౌట్ వచ్చింది. ఈజ్ ఇన్ అనదర్ ప్లేస్. సో వాళ్ళ యాక్సెస్ తో మనం ఏమైనా సెట్ చేసుకుని వాళ్ళ వరకే వర్క్ చేసుకునేటట్టు ఏమైనా ఉంటుందా?
Why we need like that? Yes, we can do that whatever we want. If
Okay.
we are working on a rule, another operator cannot work on because we have a lock or checkout and check-in functionality, right?
Okay.
So if you are creating a new rule, let's say you are working on a requirement, created a new rule, so obviously another operator will not work on, right? So because it's not required for them. If you are modifying the existing rule, so that means like somebody or someone also want to work on that rule, but like when you check out, another operator cannot. It is again like checkout and check-in, so it's not like having the separate access, creating the separate access for developers. All the developers will have the same access, but when the developer is working on a rule, at the same time another operator cannot.
Okay.
Meaning it will not
Sure.
allow multiple users to work on a rule simultaneously. The same thing applies for work object also. When someone is working on the case, it will not allow other operator to work on a case.
Understood.
Yeah. So we have that is the Pega default behavior. So we don't need to create separate access and to provide it.